let's start. Welcome to July's Inner Circle. I think most of you know me. I'm your host, Chris Dames. I don't know what to call myself anymore. And what we'll do before we start is just go around the room, and before we start looking at the case study, is go around the room and just highlight to everybody. Somebody's definitely got a dog. Somebody,
sorry, that's me.
No worries, Mike. Just highlight who you are, what you do, and what life is like business-wise for you at the minute. Ian, should we start with you?
Hi everyone, Ian Brazier from iBray, business consultant specialising in change management and data protection. What is life like for me at the moment? Lonely in one respect, because I haven't ventured out very far. I've got my first face-to-face networking meeting on Friday, social distance one outside. So I'm glad that Friday is going to be a warm one, just a little bit concerned that it's going to be a bit too warm, but there we go. Work-wise, yeah, it's been really interesting having to speak to people either on the phone, over Zoom, when you're used to actually sitting next to someone and showing them how to do things, you know, when you're side by side. So it's taken a bit of getting used to, but yeah, no, using file sharing sites, being invited to help them understand even Excel functionality in terms of how they can make use of the functions in Excel to help them monitor all of their activity. So yeah, no, it's good.
Yeah. Driven, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think lockdown has driven progress in terms of people getting their act together in terms of just being more technologically competent. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's as you say, it's forced many things, and we've probably got used to things actually quite easily when you look back on it. Whereas if you'd have said to someone, oh, why don't you save time and not travel up to Birmingham once every 2 weeks and only do it once a quarter and have virtual meetings in between? You would have said, what? No, I'm not going to do that. But it works.
Charlie's doing some work at the minute with one of our corporate clients, and they've said that they're not going to, like in the future, they're not going to sort of remove the social element of work, but getting the balance right is something that they're going to be looking at doing. Rob, what's life for you at the minute?
Yeah, it's interesting. Afternoon, everyone.
I like the comment that just starts, yeah.
Well, obviously, Chris, you know what I do. For everybody else, I'm an estate planner. I do wills and powers of attorney and the like. So pretty much lockdown hasn't really affected me, because for a lot of the job, when it comes to attesting wills and powers of attorney, I've actually been going out and seeing people throughout. So yeah, my main business kit has been a face mask and a pair of gloves since lockdown started. What it has enabled me to do, being very, very selfish, is any long distance appointments, sort of more than an hour away from home, I'm now doing on Zoom, which I would never, ever, ever have done pre-lockdown. I'd have gone out and seen them face to face. So it's enabling me to manage my time a lot better. But I have been active throughout. The last 4 or 5 weeks has been absolutely manic with work on face-to-face. What I've found is, if you explain to people what you do and how you do it, they're much happier to go out and for them to go into their home, keep social distance if it's indoors, or we keep 2 meters away. If, like this morning, it was a relatively nice morning, we sat in the garden. And it was really, really nice. So from that perspective, nothing much has changed. It's been a case of just managing the situation rather than being affected by it.
How about cutting down on the travelling time for those long distance clients? Is that?
Well, yeah, the cars thanked me. Definitely because there's not tens of thousands of miles been going on the clock. And I have sort of almost made it an unwritten rule now. If I get an inquiry from someone over an hour away, my first option now is Zoom or WhatsApp, rather than jump in the car, and that's enabled me to be really, really focused on the work I'm doing here. Which in turn has meant less late nights, less early mornings.
Or freedom of time.
Yeah, I actually know what a weekend looks like now as well.
Well, I mean, the car might thank you, but the fish won't, will they? Because
that's another subject. That's another subject.
Friday, there's live for you.
Hello, Chris. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
For those who know me, it'll just reinforce what I do. I'm a later life transition coach, which means my clients are grey head, silver head, or no head. Work is bolted onto what Chris does, which is retirement planning. In terms of my work, it's been a strange one, actually, because my work is effectively face-to-face. But my clients and I have sort of evolved, managing new ways of dealing with work. My first client is actually, again, I'm seeing first time around outdoors on Friday. So looking forward to that. It's going to be in a coffee shop, but it's going to be outside. So looking forward to that. But
cool.
Yeah, it's kept me busy. The focus has been a lot more now because people are going through huge changes in their lives in the way they used to do things to what they're able to do now or not able to do things. So this is in effect the biggest transition that we're all facing at this present moment in time. So it's keeping me quite busy. In terms of what the clients are like, it's a mixed bag. So some who are actually on a complete lockdown, physical and mental, and they're scared and petrified of going outside, not just along the front door, but also the back door.
Okay.
Others are actually looking optimistically and looking towards a brighter future. So we're working together to put things in place. So keeping quite busy at the moment. Thank you.
Cool. Amazing. Great stuff. Sharon, tell us a little bit about you.
Sandy, I'll mute back first. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Sharon from Argos Accounting. So I've been 20 odd years in the accountancy industry and basically decided that I really want to work with my clients in a completely different way, have a far more collaborative relationship with them, be far more intuitive and clued up to what their needs are rather than just giving them what we think they need, actually learning what they need and then giving them that, starting with daily bookkeeping to credit control if they need support, to management accounts. And I subcontract all the compliance stuff for year-end accounts basically because it's not what I want to do anymore. I want to work more closely on their future, not their history.
Yes, yeah. So it's the strategic planning as opposed to the compliance-y style stuff that you're focused on. And has lockdown been for you? Because you've sort of literally launched a new business in lockdown, haven't you? Virtually.
I did indeed. So I started on my own on the 4th of May, mid-lockdown. I was partway through a 3-month notice period of my previous firm when all this sort of bubbled. Yeah. So it's been interesting. It's been slower than I would have liked, but hopefully it's going to start to pick up now.
Good, good. David, tell us a little bit about you.
Good afternoon, all. Nice to see you. Dave Hall, Courtney. We deal with non-financial compliance. That covers everything from health and safety, getting safe contractor chairs, accreditations of businesses, helping them with their trade certifications, accreditations, British standards, etc. And the ISO suite of management supporting certifications. I'd like to say, yeah, it's been a bit full on the last 4 months or so. Change of style, actually, how you deal with clients has been sort of alluded to already. Adjustments in dealing with people through Zoom, no face-to-faces for me, but I've been kept very, very busy with trying to maintain existing clients' procedures and practices, amending their health and safety policies to really face up to the challenges of the COVID pandemic that we've been facing. Considerable changes there for all the existing clients, not taking any new clients on, simply because we've been engaged totally on adjusting the ways that current clients have to adapt to meet the COVID.
And just out of interest, the ISO standards now reflect COVID safety compliance or not?
No, not really, because they're all sort of the ISOs are standards which aren't necessarily reflecting COVID. Where the COVID impact has been particularly on how you change procedures for businesses to ensure the safety of their staff, their clients, third parties. All right, health and safety covers some of the PPE issues, but not everything. And it's been looking at procedures, doing risk assessments for COVID in particular. Throws up all sorts of different challenges for each individual business. I deal with a lot of businesses who have operatives out in the field. Security, for instance, or removal companies or construction companies, they've got a face-to-face element. Well, that raises all sorts of things, how they need to ensure that even their clients or the end user understands what responsibilities they have in ensuring that operatives will remain safe and they remain safe during the operations. So it has been difficult. It was alluded to earlier as well, changing this topic slightly. Working from home has suited me down to the ground. Thank you very much. I've saved traipsing up and down the A13 or the A127 or whatever. And I get a half an hour in bed every morning. I didn't used to get.
Well, that's good.
The dog's happy, you know, gets an extra quarter an hour run as well.
We're a bit worried about our dog because we know that like September comes and like the kids are back to school and Charlotte's at college and me and Cass here at work. It's going to go, I've had all this company for 4 months and where's everybody gone?
Chris, that's the second time you've done it to me. You've got in front of me by about half a second. For my next point, that's the second time you've done it.
I'm good at that, mate. I'm good at that. I'll let you talk about the standards when we get to the case study.
Yeah, worry about it later. But you know, in terms of the dog, the company's full on at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not going to last. And how do you sit down and say, terribly sorry, girl, you ain't
we're off.
Yeah.
Life back to normal. See you later.
I'm going to have a neurotic dog on my hands next. Over the next problem, more vets bills.
I think with our one, it's the more neurotic dog because he's neurotic enough as it is. Steve, Steve Silver, tell us about you, mate.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephen Silver from Silver Insolvency Solutions. Like Sharon, next week is my last week of my notice, and I started my business about 6 weeks ago, 2 months now, doing exactly what I've always done, helping people who are financially struggling. But it's been very busy, really busy. I'm meeting directors in their gardens, trying to sort out their affairs. Last week I went to a company that's quite a well-known coach company. So they do coach tours, they do coaches for school trips, sporting events and things like that. They've got about 40 different coaches from, 7-seater, 8-seater minibuses, right up to a 72-seater coach. And obviously they're in a terrible state, no events going on. So, they've got £1 million worth of finance on these coaches. So it's a real complex matter. I've been up, I think Ian mentioned about Birmingham. I got the directors to come down from Birmingham to meet me in my garden. And they run an Indian restaurant with 500 covers. It's a massive, 26, 28 staff, and it's buffet style. And they're obviously in a terrible situation. So, you look at various situations, you look at the government schemes to help, the funding, what's in place. And, it's been interesting. It really is. And I can only see myself getting busier, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it's, it hasn't affected me in any ways. The same with what you said with traveling there. I don't have to commute into London anymore. And I've got to you had a half hour in bed. I have at least an hour extra in bed. So
just to be clear, it's not a competition, chaps. Right? It's not a competition. I only have an extra 15 minutes in bed, but that's not. Janet, how much more of a lay-in do you have, and do you want to tell everybody about?
You know what? I must be the complete opposite. I've never got up so flipping early, I tell you. We've got so many living in our house at the moment.
Yeah.
I just feel
Yeah.
I'm just there to clear up after everybody. Hang the washing out, do all this.
Yeah.
My life has compounded in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
All
Everything's
our kids have come home, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got one come back from uni, one that was working abroad with a boyfriend as well, another one that was doing shifts that I never saw, and all of a sudden they're all there, and some.
Yeah.
So eating us out of house and home, and yeah, a constant stream of washing and yeah.
So does that mean you're intentionally going in the office early just to
I
get
do. I literally
quiet?
have come in here to get away from them all. Like, please. So yeah, I think I'm probably in a minority as far as the sedate home life.
No, you know, you're not alone. I moved back to the office about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that was just because I get my work done.
Oh,
I can
absolutely,
focus more.
yeah, 100%, yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah. I mean, it's just like constant food going. I tried to sort of, you know, cocoon myself in an office at home, but it didn't work. It didn't work at all. So, no, I'm
tell
back
us a
in.
little bit about your business, Janet.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, we've just been really, really busy, I think, with just supporting all our business, just where we've got such a wide range of clients in the sort of accountancy field, and they're mainly small businesses, but it's just totally different trades. I think supporting all them with different needs has been a challenge. Particularly, you know, things like all the grants, we're dealing with different boroughs and trying to navigate. No two boroughs seem to be the same in their criterias, so that's been interesting. You know, managing all the furloughing, again, you know, a moving target of that. So yeah, that's been again a challenge with the revenue website's not being obviously put together quite quickly, so not particularly user friendly. So yeah, there's been lots of things to deal with on top of our normal sort of stuff.
And changing sound as well,
losers,
right?
yeah, it's been really interesting for us because we've seen some businesses that have done amazingly well, you know, maybe diversified, and others that have, you know, really like struggling, like Stephen said, you know, where they've literally got no business at all. Yeah. So yeah, it's been interesting times, but yeah.
Cool, thank you. Mike, how's life for you?
Yeah, life's very good, thank you. I mean, I've been working from home for years. My big difference is visiting clients, of course. So visiting new clients, people putting their businesses on the market. Sorry, I should mention I'm a business sales and business valuations is my job. EM&F, I cover Herts, Beds, Bucks and Essex. So I've been out now. I've been to Tiptree the other day to value and take on a fish and chip shop. A couple of cafes in Edgware, one in Milton Keynes. So I'm out and about now. Still using Zoom. Like Rob, really, I quite like to have a meeting on Zoom before I have a face-to-face meeting, because that cuts down the number of wasted journeys. The number of times I've been to the Essex coast to value a business where, you know, I was one of 4 people going to value it, and I've got a 1 in 4 chance, maybe slightly better I'd like to think, but you know, let's say one in 4 chance of getting it, and there's 75% chance it's a wasted journey and a more or less a wasted day. And that, so you know, I think the Zoom and what we've learned during lockdown will be useful for that, and of course it'll be useful for networking as well. I think there'll be a place for Zoom for virtual networking, particularly small groups of this sort of size where you're focused and have a lot in common and work to a close structure. I think those will continue to work really well virtually. The social side isn't as good, and some giant meetings with 60+ people. I'm going to a BNI tomorrow with quite a few people in it, and I'm not expecting that to be too exciting, to be honest, because you've got to listen to everybody's pitch, and that'll take an hour. Yeah. And you know, so that it's better to meet people face to face. I think, but
I think you're right. I think certain networks suit face to face better, don't they? The ones that are a bit more social are the ones, and larger are the ones where you might benefit. Richard, how's life in your world? You're back in the shop, right?
Yes. Hello, all. I'm Richard Jeremiah Clark from Connect Lifetime Mortgages, based in Upminster. So I help unlock equity in the property for over 55s, generally for any purpose. And, you know, so they put that towards a rich retirement lifestyle. It's been all right, actually, Chris. We kind of, a bit like yourself 4 weeks ago, made a decision to open up fully. So my business partner, which is kind of there Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'm going to be there Thursday and Friday. That's how we got round it.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, we're open. But we find it quite a challenge in terms of, before the lockdown, we were going to people's homes as part of our sales processes. We try 100% of the time to go in and see the clients face to face in their home. That's part of the job, to see what it looks like. So I was having lots of cups of tea and nice bickies and stuff. And now, up until recently, I was meeting them at the front of their garden while they were on the doorstep, and I'm standing by the gate.
It's not the same, is it?
No, not really, not really. So, you know, so it has been different from that perspective, but I'm hopefully it's easing now, so
yeah.
We're okay.
I think we're getting there slowly, aren't we?
I think so, yeah.
Jacqueline, how are you? You all right?
Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm cool. I've actually enjoyed being on Zoom and having meetings. I've incorporated it into my practice now. New connections, first meeting on Zoom, has made life a lot easier. In fact, when I first started my business, I wanted to do coaching online. People weren't ready for it then. Now everybody is happy to be online, to do their talking, to do their meetings. And so that's been good. Business is slowly picking up. My focus is family run businesses, and ideally face to face, because there's a lot that you pick up when you meet people face to face. For instance, on here, we can just see our shoulders and our heads. When you see people physically, you see a lot more interaction from their body, which gives you a lot more clues to what's going on. So that's the downside of trying to conduct business on Zoom, but I think it's really good. I think it will be incorporated more into people's way of working.
Yeah.
Especially if they work for large companies. People might use Teams because of how it's been marketed. But I think Zoom will be the way to go for a lot of people, especially when they're small businesses. And I do agree, having those larger meetings on Zoom isn't really conducive to getting to know people.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's going to just be a different combination. Talk to me about the award you got from Havering recently. What happened there?
Oh, that was a surprise. I didn't know I was going to be mentioned. I got an honourable mention as the BAME, not Babe, BAME of the week.
It could have been both. Yeah.
It could have been both. It could have been both, but it was for one. But that's been nice because I've been getting invitations to go and do more public speaking from that.
Oh, good.
So that's been a benefit.
Good. Please hear it. Paul, tell us about you, mate.
Okay. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Lulubai. With F. Barnes Solicitors. Predominantly deal with wills, trust, and probate. So obviously it's been quite busy. I've been working predominantly from home. I do see the odd clients, the odd visits, but worked out a system with the secretary. So she goes in every day and scans stuff over and deal with, documents, my end, and made it work somehow. So we deal with a bit of family law and properties as well. But yeah, my core area is just trust, deeds, and deputyship, probate type matters, which obviously the COVID situation has not helped, but that's the way it is.
And I just noticed that you had a guest visitor, which
I know.
normally happens to me, to be honest. I'm surprised it's happened to somebody else. Who's there to say hello? Is that your son?
Yeah, he is.
Not anymore, he's gone. He's off. Thank you. Sorry, and Harsha, can you tell everybody a little bit about you?
Yes, so I'm studying my master's degree in investment management at Coventry University, and I'm doing my summer internship with Cervello Financial Planning. I'm helping them with their survey and researches, and yes, that's pretty much about me. I'm
Amazing.
from India, and I'm here to do my master's.
Amazing, thanks, Harsha. I didn't want to put you on the spot there, but thanks for getting involved. And hopefully everybody knows who I am. My name's Chris Daves. I'm the director of Cervello Financial Planning. Our experience during lockdown so far has been an interesting one, because the first 4 weeks was just calming our existing clients down and making sure they were okay. We did a lot of that. Bit in the middle, working on and not in the business, so we got a lot of the projects finished that we had on our list to complete, so that's been really good. But in the last 4 weeks it's been really busy, so currently we're taking on about 2 clients a week, and I think part of the reason being is because people are really thinking about what's next, and having this time to reflect has allowed them to say, I want to make sure that my financial situation is going to allow me to make the right life decisions. I don't anticipate us being that busy in terms of new client engagement forever, but I think during this period it's going to be an interesting time. So yeah, a bit of after a lull for us in terms of new client work, we're now seeing a decent amount of growth, which is really positive. And on another note, I've just got a cup of tea, which is amazing. That's good news. And I'm really enjoying seeing people again. I think the part of the job that I really like is that really getting to know clients really well. And I think Zoom has its place, but just seeing somebody and saying, we can help you is just a different dynamic. Hopefully you all got a copy of the case study. Please, on the comments, first one who gets the not so obscure 80s reference does get a prize. I don't know what that prize is yet, Russ. You'll have to work that one out, mate. But just to go through the case study so we can have a bit of a comment on it. We've got 4 partners, John, Templeton, Bosco and Howard. They've all got different responsibilities in the business, but they're equal shares and they're salaried equally. Married, wives have no particular interest in getting involved in the business, and the business has been set up for 10 years. They employ 10, but they've also got a bank of contractors doing the security work because they're a security business. John's concerned that they've grown, but they've not kept track of the numbers particularly well and need some help doing that. Turns over a decent amount, 1.8 million, but they haven't got up-to-date figures on profit, and doesn't really know how much profit they're making after they pay their contractors. They've got a real challenge because they're all at different stages in their life and thinking about how that reflects on what they do with the business in the future, and whether selling might be right for 1 or 2 of the partners. It might not be right for the other 2 who want to carry on, and what are their options there. What else have we got? Bosco's mum is spending a bit more than she's got coming in. She's got a property and wants to look at the options, but also has credit card debt. None of the 4 partners have wills or power of attorneys in place, although their financial advisor have been recommending they put some stuff in place. And one of the factors that stopped them was the fact that the shares, they didn't know who to give them to. Do they give it to the partners of the business, or do they give it to the spouse? And we've got a bunch of questions there which hopefully cover most of what we do in this room, so that you've got a bit of the scope to start. So who do I start with? Pradeep, how do we navigate a business where you've got 4 partners, each wanting different things from their life? Oh, if you can turn your mic on, that'd be amazing, mate.
Thanks, Chris. In answer to your question, looking at first thing that stands out is that you've got 2 set of generations here. Bosco, who is now 64, and Howard, who is now 66. So the other guys are maybe a little spring chicken, but they're not far off behind. What we're looking at here is an ideal situation where you mentioned in your earlier talk that people are actually thinking about exiting out and discussing what next. So those are questions I'd particularly like to ask Bosco and Howard moving forward, what their plans are. And also in terms of what they've acquired over the last 10 years in terms of expertise and skills in the business, what would they like to do with it? And of course, map out what they'd like to do when they exit out of the business. And exiting out of business will offer them a lot of opportunities to do other things. And that's something that we would explore in detail and at depth, actually. And also map out how they're going to achieve it. So certainly a lot of engagement to do with them to help them ease out from the business into retirement, or now we call it later life. So planning is essential, otherwise they'll be fraught with a lot of problems moving forward.
Yeah. Talk to me about what sort of timescale that you'd recommend that people start thinking about that.
Usually before they're thinking about a particular, because we all have a default setting, we think, you know, at a certain age I'd like to retire or ease out of a business. And I'd recommend that you either start from 5 years before that watershed mark that you marked for yourself. The reason being, you need to start preparing in advance in terms of how you, because when you're working intensely, you have habits that you have created, even going to work, getting up at a certain time in the morning, and function that you have. So you have in essence a structure. Now to come out of that structure, you need to replace it with another structure. So it's really planning consciously, what are you going to do with your time, and start implementing some of these changes gradually over a period of time until it embeds into you. So when the date actually comes, you're not going to sort of fall off on a Friday afternoon and into nothing.
Yeah.
You'll have something to go to.
Yeah. Okay,
and,
thank you.
And also it has serious implications because, you know, when you're working, you're pretty much mentally and physically active. So it keeps you in reasonably good health and well-being. That is your responsibility when you're not doing that in that structure anymore. So you need to incorporate and start planning what you're going to do to keep yourself physically and mentally alert. Otherwise, what can happen is it may impact their health and well-being moving forward.
I mean, the other interesting thing is in the case study, it doesn't say what Howard and Bosco plan to do next, because work might consist of the future part of their life, mightn't it? It just might not be in this particular business.
Possibly, yes. They can actually use their skills, not just from this 10 years in this business, but anything else that they've acquired prior to that. Yeah. And they can start afresh and think, what else can they apply themselves? Maybe not at the same intensity of 9 to 5, 7 days a week or 5 days a week, but at least maybe on a consultancy basis, just to keep their gray matter going and keep them active. That's one of the things, but you know, it's something that they can work out how they want to.
It's really interesting.
That part of life with the other side, which is really social side, finding other interests, finding other plans. And I noticed in one of the guys, he's got an interesting word there. I had to do a little bit of research for it. Aviophobia.
He doesn't like getting on planes.
Fear of flying. It's not a word that we band about, but we all know that there is a fear of flying. Now that means it's limiting his travel options, but that doesn't necessarily mean he can't travel. He can still go overseas. He can either drive there or go to the nearest port and go cruising. So a lot of options over there for him to spend his time there.
There's plenty of options there. Right, let's move on to Sharon. So Sharon, books are in a mess. They're in a position where they are they've been commercially successful, but they need a better grip of where they are. Talk to me about how you might help them with that.
The first thing, a bit like I said before, I'd like to get a handle on what they want to do next. So, because that helps. Have they been working alongside somebody who they could possibly train to take over from them? Is there a natural successor if they exit the business from a business point of view? They certainly need management accounts. there's no question. I don't see any hint of management accounts here. They need to agree KPIs. We need to agree what we're tracking, and we need to start tracking and building up a set of figures that they have got a handle on what they're going, and then get a handle on where they want to go. Because once we've got a baseline, what next?
Yeah. Yeah.
That, I think, is a key thing for all of them.
Okay, so talk to me about what you'd recommend if there was a potential natural successor in the business, but they weren't there yet.
So I suggest to start working with them. If we're looking at a timescale of 3 to 5 years, assuming, start working with them as soon as possible. Start bringing them up so that you can take more of a back seat effectively to see how they develop, make sure that they're developing, make sure they're doing things the way you want it, the process, the procedures, that everything's in place and robust for handing over to somebody else. And get them involved in the numbers, because the more commitment employees have to the numbers at this stage, assuming they're not going to give them shares, but that's an option. It could be that they have a small percentage of shares to incentivize them. The more they get involved, the more passionate they are about what they're doing. And when you're in this position, you need a passion about it. You need to really care.
Yeah, 100%. You know what? Something we've done in our business, and again, this was one of the projects that we did during lockdown to work on and not in and not on. I can never get those two right. On and not in.
On and not in.
Is we recorded everybody's job profiles in quite a granular form to say what everybody did. Mainly because I wanted to give half of mine away. But actually it was a really useful exercise for everybody, because what it then allows you to do is say, is that within your skill set, or do we need to give that job to somebody else? And that's been useful for us to think about what that looks like in my plan's 10 years, but what that looks like in 10 years for me and my business. So yeah, what gaps have they got makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
And the processes and procedures as well, you find with a business like this, you roll on working in the business and on the business. Are their processes as they should be? Do they need to review some of their processes? Have you got the best person doing the job in hand effectively? Is it sitting with the best person?
Yeah. Paul, so these guys have got nothing in place. Where do you start?
Well, a bit difficult one here. I mean, other than the obvious, LPAs and wills that their financial advisors mentioned, it doesn't look like they have a clear succession plan, which implies, well, it also mentioned the wives are not really that keen, not sure about, obviously, children and family. But I think I'll probably refer to the financial guys to help them sort things out first.
Yeah.
And then, get them come back, and we could look at potentially what the valuation of the company is, see what they might all be entitled to, and then obviously work that in line with what personal assets they also have. So if there's going to be inheritance tax planning, we could put that in place. And if we have, it looks more like a bit of a trust, probably a life interest trust will go in, so that it's, we leave the capital in place. The wives may then benefit from having it, paid to them going forward, rather than, I don't see them being involved in the company going forward. So I think, they definitely need a lot of financial advice, assistance. Once that's all taken care of, then as far as, having inheritance tax and wills, trust put in place, LPAs, as the case may be, then that usually should be straightforward to them.
I mean, I mean, the interesting one is also that plan on exit from an inheritance tax perspective, because currently the shares qualify, they've all been involved more than 2 years. It qualifies for business property relief because it's a private business.
Yeah.
As soon as they take the money out, then it sits in their estate and is liable to inheritance tax, doesn't it? And the valuation will depend on a lot of that. So Mike, that naturally brings us on to you. You're sitting there with this business. They're in a position where their turnover looks pretty healthy, but they haven't got a specific handle on profits at the minute. But they've also got this challenge where they've all got different things that they want to do. How would you manage that in terms of a business valuation?
In terms of business valuation, well, first of all, they need a shareholder agreement, don't they? So, I mean, they haven't got a shareholder agreement. The shareholder agreement should set down exactly what does happen to the shares in the event that one of them dies, one of them wants to go away, one of them wants to leave earlier. So, you know, that's the number one port of call in my opinion. How do I can't value the business. It's worth roughly 3 to 5 years EBITDA profits.
And we haven't
where
got
it is on that
figure, have we?
Where it is on that scale, and we don't no idea what EBITDA is. We assume they probably are, but I assume they probably are profitable because they're growing and presumably they're generating cash, or that would be an issue. The fact they don't know what their profit is, they presumably know what's in the bank account, and presumably it's not bumping up against any limit anywhere. So kind of otherwise that would be mentioned in the brief. But in terms of where it falls on the 3 to 5 years, financials is obviously the most important, but there are other aspects such as the growth prospects, cash flow, management, value proposition. I mean, having a value proposition of if you have a problem and no one else can help, and if you can find us.
Oh, thank you, Mike. That's my day. That's the only reason I do these events.
Yeah, I know, I realise that. I've only been to 2, but I realise that. So wouldn't necessarily add to the value, in my opinion. It does suggest the marketing's a bit on the weak side. But business dependent, are they dependent on one customer? Are they dependent on one particular member of staff? I don't think so at the moment, but obviously the directors have got different skills, which we've already talked about covering. Customer satisfaction, again, we kind of assume they're happy, even if they do shoot and they don't kill people, do they? The A-team, sorry.
Never.
I forgot that. Yeah,
they shoot a lot, but they don't.
They shoot a lot, but then no one ever gets killed. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And there's as Paul and Mike mentioned, there's a lot in there that we'd probably potentially support this client with. I'm going to cover off those issues in a little while, but. Jacqueline, you're in a position where you've got these 4 friends who have set this business up. It's not a family business, but you've got an interesting dynamic there. How are you going to support this client just to make the right decisions moving forward?
Yeah, the dynamic between the team I thought was quite interesting. Although they got job titles, I don't think it's clear to each of them what they really do. I saw a line here, since the start of business, they are focused on the development of their own specialist sectors, which I took to mean they look after what they look after and everything's been running okay. They haven't had the real turbulence, otherwise the relationship and its little bits of difficulty that might be in there would be revealed. I wondered why John doesn't know the business's figures and who's actually looking after those, and if they're being looked after, why they're not being communicated to each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's no clear FD in the situation.
No.
There's no finance director.
No, there's not. So that's a skills gap possibly there. And John seems to make unilateral decisions. So maybe as MD, he thinks I'm supposed to make decisions, and everybody else will fall in to whatever I say. It seems to be the way things are going. So yeah, who looks after the revenue? Is it Templeton or Bosco? Because there's not sure there. And they're talking about maybe John and Templeton running a business together, but are they really equipped to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen they don't seem to have a partnership agreement, because part of that would be to clarify who does what and what they actually bring. So I think how they run their business is in quite a loose way.
Yeah.
And they're not really sure of what the others does, but it's like, okay, you're taking care of it, so I won't worry about it. But they do need to worry. They do need to be concerned. They do need to show interest.
But then what's falling between the gaps is the part of the challenge, isn't it? You know, like it looks like the control of the accounts might be falling between the gaps, and some of the structural elements might be falling between the gaps, right?
Yep, definitely. So I think the real skills need to be looked at. So what's being duplicated? What do they really actually bring to the table that can say that they are a going concern? And their wives may not be interested, but they may have children who want to get involved at some point.
I think it's a fair comment.
We discussed. And so should they be running the business, or should they give it over to managers and be able to take what they need as shareholders?
I think that's a fair comment. Janet, I mean, I know if I look at our business, certainly when we first started, the structures we've got in place now are a lot better than when it first started. And it's probably not unusual for businesses to just start and then get organised.
Yeah.
But what's the natural first steps of getting that done?
I think, you know, you start off and, you know, you might have your spreadsheets and you use them to sort of sort yourself out a little bit and do a little bit of planning and, you know, bookkeeping on that. But, you know, to get to 1.8 million,
it's big, isn't it?
It's a bit, how do they do that? I mean, I was a bit sort of taken aback that firstly, he's doing it himself. You know, why is he doing it? He should be, you know, having someone to administer that for him, and he should be the one then using the figures to do his planning with. But so that just seems a little bit strange that, you know, why is his time is valuable, and you know, he should be using his, you know, knowledge and experience to run the business instead of crunching, you know, figures to give to an accountant. Didn't get that at all, really. But yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. You know, you start off at that situation. But having said that, I think a lot of this sort of online sort of cloud software is so affordable now. You know, we're actually saying to clients, start with it. You know, you can start, you know, $5 a month, and you know, you've got some good software that will grow with you then and give you some good data to be working with as you grow. So, you know, I do think there is a sort of a market there now to sort of start off even small with something.
So let me just chuck a tiny spanner in the works, and this is something we've had to think about as a business as well. Often it's not about the cost; it's about giving the control away.
Yeah.
So how do you manage a process where somebody's built and grown a business, but they're so used to doing stuff that they just don't want to? How do you manage that process?
Yeah, no, that is a challenge, and you do have to sort of eke it away from a director sometimes, and you know, even down to the fact that, you know, we'll do all their sort of administration for them, but actually they don't want it to go to the client until they've seen it, so we have to sort of route it around them. But you know, fair enough. But I think once they see the value of what you're doing and what they can actually, you know, get from that, then the trust starts to come, and they start to let go a little bit. Yeah. But until then, I think they're really worried that by letting go, you know, you'll fail it, and you won't achieve what they're achieving. But when you can show you can actually achieve what they're achieving and more, then they start to see the value.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is difficult because, like you say, you know, when you start your business, it is yours. You do everything, and to start giving some of that away, I think
it's a process, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is a challenge, but yeah, I can't get quite. It's quite frustrating to see that, because you know that they could be getting so much more out of their business and so much more planning.
And even if it's not more growth, it just might be more time to spend their lives enjoyably.
100%. 100%, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the whole sort of, control, budgeting, controlling your costs, it just all falls into place then once you've got that sort of system in place to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just convincing some people that that's the way to go.
Takes a bit of time, right? David, we've talked about how important it might be to get the accounting systems and processes in place. What else might you recommend for a firm like this to say, let's make sure that we're systemising some of the other elements of your business?
Fine. Yeah, couldn't agree more with Janet's comments there at all. For somebody not to know in a £1.8 million turnover business, how they got there, how they sustained it, and sort of vaguely, oh, we don't know how much profit we're making, all this does sound a little bit of a weak situation here. But my area really is about growth and development, not about succession. So I might spin the conversation a weeny bit away from that. One point in there, though, that we touched upon in this earlier meeting, point is made that, I forgot his name now, one of them is seen as a key person in the business. Now, if you're talking about key people in businesses, that surely has to be covered by your business continuity plan. I don't see any reference to them having a business continuity plan, which will help with your succession in that respect. I know there's many aspects to business continuity, but that is a key issue that really that should be addressing. If that person is a key person, their £1.8 million turnover, however much profit they're making, is going to make them very vulnerable, I would have thought.
100%.
And also, I keep forgetting names, unfortunately. I keep my crib sheet. I've forgotten his name now. Oh, Templeton, head of marketing and business development. Yeah, the area I'd be more interested in. But of all the people, I'd like to be Howard, head of transportation and logistics. I can't see there being too much transportation and logistics in this particular setup. I'd love that job. I know that Howard is the elder statesman of the business. He probably wants to take it easy, but I really can't see how that stands alone. Who looks after all the admin and the running of the business? Who's providing the support services to the business? Who looks after their IT? Who looks after all their? Is there a manager underpinning that? Yeah. I know it's only a case study.
Who manages supporting the business?
Yeah. I know it's only a case study, but a couple of things struck me when I read it through, that they really haven't got a director with responsibility for making sure all your support services are in there, which includes a finance director as well. Who's the finance director? Have they got a finance director anywhere? You know, the structure looks a little bit odd. And the first thing I think I would have moved in and said, okay, let's look at your structure. But that's another issue. As far as it goes, I think the last comment on here was that, excuse me, I wanted to professionalise the business. I hope 1.8 million they are professional, but from my perspective as really having an interest in growth and development of the business, and I want to get some public sector contracts, hopefully, to take it forward, it's not going to be a short-term fix. You need all their things in place to make them a credible supplier to the public sector. That's going to take them 2 or 3 years. Okay, who's going to take that on board on the basis that some of them are looking for out anyway?
Yeah.
So public sector contracts, good, but it's a long-term aspiration. It's not going to happen overnight. Yeah, I can help put them into place what they need to stand a chance of getting public sector contracts.
As long as they understand that that might not meet their life goals, because it might be a longer term play.
Yeah, they'll have to invest in it. You know, it's I would say for any firm, you're looking at probably minimum of 12 to 24 months to actually, if you're a virgin to it all, it's going to take you about that sort of time to actually get up and running in the public sector. Because you need to do your gap analysis, see where your gaps are in terms of what you've got in place to make you a credible supplier. The whole thing would be, from my perspective, looking at your competencies and your capacities. What certifications have you got? And have you got the references to underpin what you're asking to do? Because what the public sector are particularly risk averse.
Yeah.
And even if I was to look at that, I would
You'd panic, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'd have a bit of a problem. Yeah, there's no company, I don't think, doesn't stand a chance of getting public sector contracts, but there is a high level of investment to actually achieve your aspiration of getting the work, and there's a lot of changes would have to be made. Would this company be up for it? I'm not so sure. The succession plan, what's going to happen? I think the comment was earlier made, you could pass it on to children, grandchildren, whatever you've got, but there's no coherence about the succession planning.
Yeah,
so,
and I think before they tender for that, they need to be clear on what their futures look like, right? Yeah, before they do it.
Again, you done it on me. My roundup was going to be, they sort of put the carpet up the horse here. They want to get work.
Again.
Yeah, that's the third time. So go.
Yeah. I promise I'm only going to do it twice more today. That's
Thanks,
it.
Mate,
Ian, thoughts on helping them professionalise the business? How might you help them do that?
I would go back to the business plan, actually. I would guess that if we're using current timeline, the last time they looked at their business plan was probably somewhere around 2012, which might have been when their business took off because of the Olympics and they gained more and more work because of all of the things from there. And they never bothered took it again. That they saw that they had money coming in the bank every week. So yeah, why bother with a business plan? So it's important to remind them that the business plan includes their whys, and that needs to that business goal and the personal goal all needs to match so that they can move on. And Sharon made the comment about KPIs, absolutely right, but not just financial ones. Try and identify KPIs from their marketing so that they get the right quality of leads coming in to maximize their time. And David also mentioned to this, I'll use the American version of the word codification. So standardize everything, get everything written down. That's going to be the best way that they can prove to anyone that they're going for a contract that they know what they're doing. This is how they go around pricing something. This is how they decide who the right person for the job is. Because in the security businesses, you need a variety of people in as much as any other business. And you need to have the right person for that location. And I think also going back to the legal thing, kind of Paul touched on it, but yeah, I mean the shareholders agreement is going to be key. And to try and give the current directors time, because again, there's no idea here of how much wealth these guys have retained. So it might not be possible to buy shares immediately. So setting up a trust for the shares might be a really good thing. And then the current directors could buy parts of those shares over time. And it also doesn't state the way in which they receive their remuneration, whether it's all salary or part salary, part dividend, which again is a key way to help them understand where it goes. People mentioned the training plan, succession plan, absolutely agree with that. And family aside, there may be the best person to take on a particular role within the business already. So there may be someone chomping at the bit to do more with the accounts. Well, if you don't ask the question, you never find out. And unfortunately, with the other job titles as they sit, John would by default be declared as responsible for the financials as the MD, and the others have got no other responsibility to do with money. He would be the one that HMRC would come and talk to first, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, that training plan, succession plan is all there, and all of that would then fit together, and also codification on sale. I don't know if Mike would agree with me on this, but normally it can increase the rate rather than 3 or 4 times turnover. It might go to 5 or 6. So having that system in place so that the current directors aren't necessary to run the business can make it a lot more attractive.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Making sure that actually the business doesn't need you anymore, and engineering it to that point. Rob, talk to me about what you'd recommend, because it looks like they've got nothing at the minute. Where would you start with these 4? Apart from banging their heads together.
Yeah, 5 minutes in a dark room would be what I would suggest. Basically, when I read the case study and I thought, well, that's it, they're going to have a right easy ride with this. Then I got to the second from last paragraph and you hit me with this bit. So, yeah, basically, from my perspective, and I'm coming in from a slightly different angle to Paul. Yes, there's issues around LPAs and the implications of not having an LPA in place, and that's from the financial well-being of the company if one loses capacity. For me, the biggest issue is the fact that none of the shareholders have got wills. And the reason, I was going to say excuse, but the reason they've used is because they don't understand what's going to go on with the shares. As it stands currently, without a will, if any of them die, they're going to die intestate. And the virtue of dying intestate, they don't have any control what happens to the shares. It becomes part of their estate and it's handed out pro rata. So it could be that surviving partners, not the shareholders, the surviving partners are the wives, will actually benefit from the shares, but that could give rise to an inheritance tax liability if there's any children. It depends on how each personal estate sits. So I'd want to know a little bit about each of the 4 sets of circumstances. You know, we know they're married. I want to know if they've got any children. Are any of the children likely to be potential successors for the business, in as much as taking a role going forward? I would be of a mind to, on the basis that a will isn't absolute and final, it can be changed and amended, get a will in place pretty damn quickly, even if it's just a basic one. Establish whether there was articles of association done when the company was set up, because that in conjunction with a will take care of the shares. Providing the articles of association was done, and there are not many companies set up without it, instruction in a will, comply with articles of association and deal with the shares. And that seems to be the big stumbling block of why they've not done a will so far. But I would do the will first. As I say, 5 minutes in the dark room should do the job. Just bang their heads together, hit them with a cricket bat, whatever you want. But that for me is first and foremost. After that, you know, the rest of the case study, there's stuff that went right over my head, and the finances can follow on. But unless the nuts and bolts are done, it's just going to be terribly difficult.
I'm sort of glad with your current client-focused approach, you're not seeing people at the minute, Rob.
It's all this pent-up frustration. No, I am seeing people, and I'm not banging their heads together. But this is just one of those cases that you think, you know, I think I've probably got an inkling on who their financial advisor is, but I think their financial advisor should have banged their heads together about 2 or 3 meetings ago.
Not doing a good job. Not doing a good job.
I'm only joking.
Right, who have I got left? Richard. So we're talking about Bosco's mum.
We are, yeah.
So help me understand how you might be able to help her.
Yeah, no worries, Chris. In fact, I was looking at this thinking, did you know the person I saw about 2.5 weeks ago? It's very, very similar in terms of the background on it. The reason why I say that, Bosco's what, 54? So, you know, the mum's age is not mentioned, but she could be 20 years at the time of giving birth roundabout. So let's put her at 74. You know, 74-year-old lady. It says here that she's spending way above her means. And so what we need to do is a budget plan and conversation. We need to look at exactly what she's spending her money on or where it's going. It could be that her lifestyle, just to live on an everyday means, is greater than her income. Okay, so we can go down that road. Or it could be that she's leaking money elsewhere. You know, has she picked up a habit at the age of 74? I just thought something. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's picked up a habit at the age of 74, which might need to be looked at. But I think, you know, what we've done in the past, apart from exploring the bank statements and everything, we've helped liaise with her personal banking manager. So you know, having a good conversation around, you know, what's going on there, because actually I would expect someone from the bank to, you know, spot things like that to a point, trends and so on. So she might be staying close to them.
Would that flag up? And again, I don't have much engagement with my bank, and typically with clients we work with, banks are not particularly open to speaking to us.
No.
Would a personal banking manager engage with Bosco's mum? Do you reckon she's got somebody?
Yeah, I'll tell you what it is, Chris. Yeah, you know, the network is shrinking. I get all that, and you know, a lot of people are now having to go to post offices where they don't have the same infrastructure to spot things. But the way that the banks have got around that is they have all these data analytical items when you log in now. So you've got all the graphs on your spending. It tells you what your neighbours are spending, what him next door to you, who he's using for his electric company, and so on and so on. So you've got all that kind of information which is actually available. So it might be an upskilling session there, which she would then go back to the bank in some way.
Say, help me have a look.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could be a telephone call, it could be a Zoom call, or whatever it may be. But let's say bank as a general. So that's the first one. And then, you know, moving on, if it is a case of, you know, she's got £45,000 worth of debt that she wants to clear, well, you know, again, two parts to this. Is it an income problem? You know, we're looking at her pension income is not enough. So it's an income problem. So I being able to look at lifetime mortgages as a solution, have an array of products which can unlock the equity in the property, and she can draw that down on a monthly basis, and it looks and feels just like an income. So we can have a conversation about how that would look to get it right, so that she's perhaps not you know, borrowing just to survive, you know, just to have a nice life. But again, on the flip side, if it is because she's overspending and she's gone, right, you know, I'm 74, I've just blown £45,000 on a load of holidays, a load of whatever it may be, I'm not going to be doing that anymore, but I don't want that debt around my legs. I don't want to be paying anything off on a monthly basis. Then I can also come and have a conversation and say, well, look, with the lifetime mortgage proposition, we can sort something out. We can replace that 45,000. You haven't got to pay anything on a monthly basis. And guess what? You're now not because you're not having to pay anything, that's going to free up your disposable income. Yeah. That's a generic, you know, there's the risks and the benefits of doing so, but that's the thing I would tackle. And the last thing I made a note of was Bosco himself. You know, he's mentioned about wanting to spend a lot of time with his mum and having the freedom to do so. So we go a little bit further and we talk about the kind of mid-term, long-term, just to see what plans are actually arranged, because it could be that if he's now looking at holidays with his mum or taking her away to do something, whatever it may be, we might need to factor that in. And if she's saying to me already she's 45 grand down, that might look like 65 grand down in 4 years' time. Is that something I need to factor in my conversation?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. And certainly those medium-term plans are important to consider. Steve, let's assume that like your restaurant business and your coach business, the security business has now lost all their revenue and they start to struggle a bit in terms of income. Where would you start with these four?
These four? Well, first of all, obviously everyone's covered most of the things. The initial thing that hit me was the shareholders agreement. They needed to sit around the boardroom and start thinking of what they're going to do in the future, the succession. Then you bring in your accountants and your lawyers to draw up that. Can I ask Richard one thing? Because you never mentioned it, and I put down, is it possible that the property could be transferred to Bosco? Because I think you said 10 years, so I think you've got maybe Bosco's 64 and the mother's about 90. So possibly, but could it be possible that Bosco has the property transferred into his name and then he could mortgage, because the property is 500,000, so he only has to have a small mortgage, and depending on what he's earning at the business anyway, he could clear off the debt straight away, and then allow the mother to stay in the property. I don't know about the inheritance tax, or you'd have to look into those sort of things. But I would have thought that was a possibility, that Bosco. But
so to cover off the RHT issue, if she's still living in the property, and again, Paul and Rob might be able to just clarify on this. If she's staying in the property and not paying a market rent, that would count as a gift with reservation. So
essentially, a transfer, yeah, it will be fully, but there'll be no RHT mitigation at all.
No, it'd still form part of her estate unless they could evidence that she paid market rent.
Yeah, and she'd have to have a formal rental agreement with a local letting agent to do that.
I was listening to everyone, and I was thinking about my own situation and my family business. I know this is not a family business, but again, you've got the founder member, my father, who's still alive. He's already got in place the shareholders agreement, will, powers of attorney, and I know that when he does pass, I will be getting a monetary value, and my two brothers will be getting shares in the business. So it's so paramount to the planning of this business. Everyone said the same. It's just amazing that they haven't got a handle on all the financials. I don't know what the salaries they're earning. These are questions that and so forth. And I've got my two nephews working in my family business as well. So they will be taking over, but everyone's got different values. I can see one of my brothers carrying on the business. The other one, when my father's, he would want to sell the business, right? Because it's worth quite a lot of money. So there's so many intangibles here. And but with the coach business and that, we're just looking at the various options of the government schemes and the COVID interruption loans and things like that. And it's not an easy situation, but the finance agreements are personally guaranteed as well. So that doesn't help either. But he's quite a wealthy guy, and he's got a good relationship with the finance companies. But there's not a lot I can say with the case study. As I said, I wrote it all down. It's a perfect opportunity though to get their finances in order, because for the last 4 months they can sit round the table and get all their accounts up to date. But the accountant seems to be the one person that doesn't seem to be doing his job properly.
You know what? I mean, the case study is typically based on an amalgam of some of my clients. And even though I've not got one that's turned over 1.8 million that hasn't got their accounts in order, let me be clear, because I would be having a conversation with them if that was the case. I have had business owners come in and speak to me who say to me, my accountant does my tax at the end of the year, and I only find out what I'm meant to be paying once I've submitted my returns. I was like, well, you're not in front of that. You've built a business of a decent scale. Why are you not sort of moving towards that? And I think you'd be surprised actually.
I've done a few lectures in the years gone past, not recently, on the failure, and I've been a big critic of the accountancy profession. Because they don't do their job
excluding the accountants in the room, right, Steve?
Yeah, I know, but no, I was saying that was years ago. And I when I speak to some of the clients, they very rarely spoke to their accountants. And it just amazes me, especially now in COVID. You would expect the accountants ring up their clients, see how things are, and discuss the way forward. But a lot of them haven't done so. They've failed.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I think I've spoken to a lot of you about my opinion on this before. But if you're in a position where you're working as a professional in a professional service and you're not consistently adding value by being strategic, there's no point.
Yeah.
Technology.
It's a question, isn't it? Is your accountant a liability or an asset? If they're an asset, they should be hands-on, they should be in there, and they should be taking more control to support this business. If they're a liability, you're working with the wrong accountant, guys.
Yeah. Do you think, just Janet and Sharon, do you think that they need a FD in this business, or would it be enough for their accountant to have a sort of remote FD role? What do you think? Do you need somebody hands-on and involved, or would an accountant typically do that?
Janet, you're on mute.
Thank you. Personally, I think you can do either. I think we've supported, you know, companies in that sort of turnover region where we're doing, you know, being that sort of ongoing support to them. But we've also done it where we support their staff doing that. So I think it is a choice. But either way, I think you've got to find out how that. If they want an in-house person, that's fine. You know, you can offer that support to that in-house person and be the point of contact, you know, when things maybe aren't going the way they want them to go. But ultimately, if you want the expertise, you know, I think you have to buy into that service to obtain the best. And, you know, then that does work really well. So I think, you know, we can do it in them sort of turnover regions. We've done both. So I think it's a choice.
You've got to be very careful what advice you give, though. You know, in the past, I've had bank managers get a real warning that they could be deemed as shadow directors if the bank manager advises a company to do certain things, or an accountant advises a company to do certain things, and they follow that advice, and it all goes pear-shaped. Those people could be in serious trouble. So you've got to be very, very careful what advice you do and what role you're playing.
Yeah, but that's what we're paid to do, isn't it? I mean, that's why I've got. I mean, I don't even want to think about my PI bill, but that's why we've got PI, and we should be giving advice.
And if your letter of engagement is clear as to what your remit is and what you're doing, you shouldn't have this grey area. Part of the thing here, I think, is going to be to really work closely with John, because if he has got control and he doesn't want to let go, you have to work in collaboration with him. You have to build up a relationship with him where you work side by side with him effectively, and you don't have to tell him what to do. You can just plant the seeds and say, well, look, these are the options. What do you think best? But at least you're in there, you're involved to give them options, and they're not just fumbling about in the dark, which is what they're doing now.
I think the other thing is as well is they're probably got settled into a bit of routine over the past 10 years, and sometimes you need to nudge busy, successful people in the right direction because they've got enough going on in their lives, and I think that's part of it. Just few things that I wanted to cover off, what we'd look at from our end. So shareholder agreement, certainly we'd recommend they get that in place 100%. But there's an element on the ownership of the shares and who they'd want the money to go to. So we did a body of work for an architectural practice back end of last year, where it was a similar sort of setup, and they were in a position where they had in their wills, they had the money going to the families, they had the money going to the spouses, the shares going to the spouses, but the spouses had no interest in continuing to run the business at all. So what we did is we said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put a cross-option agreement in place. Now, a cross-option agreement means that if the spouse wants to sell, they can sell, and if the surviving partners, this is in the event of a death of a director, if the surviving directors want to buy, they can buy, and each person can have that right to either sell or buy, and the other person's got to meet that. Now, why wouldn't you just say automatically you'd have something in place where you'd, if the partner dies, you'd have to sell and you'd have to buy. If it's compulsory, it doesn't qualify for business property relief. So you need to make sure that the individual spouse and the remaining directors have got the option to sell and buy, and it's not a compulsory thing. And then the other thing we did is, because there wasn't enough cash in the business to pay for the shares, so we put life policies in place for all of the partners that paid out to the business So we knew that there was going to be enough capital in the business that if any of them died, they wouldn't have to worry about cash flow. And there are your two elements: cross option agreement with buy and sell arrangements for all the spouses, and then life cover in place to make sure that the business is going to have the cash if one of the partners die, to make sure they're going to be okay. That's what you do. Now, Sharon and I were on a call, I think last week, where we were talking about key man. That's not key man. So that only protects the shares to the business. The next step is who does the job if one of them dies? And what you then look at doing is cost of recruitment. So how much would it cost to recruit somebody else like that? And the time it might take to replace that person and the potential loss on the business based on that. So let's say you lost Templeton, who's their head of marketing and development, that because he's got all the commercial relationships, it might be that the commercial impact on the business of losing him might be different to Howard, who, according to some people, it just hasn't even got a job. I mean, he's like, so he's doing very little, David, right? Howard, he's got a plum role. So I think looking at those two elements would be where we'd focus on. And then the other step is just to identify what their aspirations are as individuals and help them get there. But I agree with all the comments about the time frame we need to do that, because doing that immediately just ain't going to happen. You're going to need a 5 to 7 year plan to get them into shape to make sure that they're there. We always say clients always come to us probably about 3 to 5 years too late, and I'd suggest that with these clients, that's probably the case. So fundamentals: get the shareholder agreement in place, get the buy and sell arrangements with spouses in place, get the life cover to protect the business today, get key man in place to protect the business today. Longer term, focus on what they need to do to exit or come out. Just want to do a quick round robin in terms of what else you'd ask this client and what else you might potentially recommend. Ian, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you start off with the KPIs loaded at the front end. What actions do you need to do? And I think taking up David's point to say that you need to kind of work up, particularly to professionalize the business and to look at tenders. Yep. Then you need to supplement that with outcomes on your KPIs, and again, not just financial. You're going to be looking at in some cases the connections with the right kind of people to propel the profile. But then developing the financials would be the next thing. I know I'm taking some of the things that Janet and Sharon will talk about, but budget, cash flow, management accounts would become more and more crucial. So again, they've got proof, they've got the monitoring process in place to govern how the business is performing. And it doesn't necessarily need to grow per se. It's just about making sure that there's the evidence to back up everything that they say they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the other interesting thing is the turnover is only one factor. We don't even know what their profit margins are at this point, do we? So it might be a case that we just improve efficiencies. Janet, how would you track that? How would you so what numbers would you start with to say, here's where we are, here's what we need to look at improving?
I think we look at current data, look at past data, do a comparison on that, then work out our margins, what our gross margins are, look at the industry standards, do a bit of benchmarking on that to compare that, then look at the overheads and see how they're, how the money's being spent then, and see what's left over. I think the motivation is then, don't you want some more left over, and we can let's work on them numbers at the top. But yeah, I think the gross margin is your start, and then you work your way down from there.
Talk to me about benchmark data. How would you get access to that?
So I mean, you can buy in that data. Sorry, did you ask Mike that?
No, you.
You can buy into that data. There are sort of companies that will sell benchmark data, and then you can look. And you know, a company of that size, I think it would be worth doing that and seeing how they sit with them other companies. And you know, it may be that if their cost of sales are particularly high compared to the other similar companies, then there's an issue there that they're not getting the discounts they should be able to get access to. So I think it's very useful to be able to access that, and it would be worth it, not necessarily ongoing, but even just as a one-off purchase to do that exercise.
Yeah, and Companies House Beta is really good now, isn't it? Because you've got access to loads of data on a company, so you can. I mean, we use it to work out whether we want to take on a client. But it's interesting. Rob, apart from what you do with the partners, what might you think about helping with in terms of Bosco's mum?
Well, I'd like to go and have a chat to her again to see.
Wouldn't take her to the darkened room. Be kind, mate.
No. She's a nice old lady. She doesn't get the darkened room treatment. She gets a nice cup of tea and the slippers. No, I mean, basically, she's sitting there with quite a nice bit of equity. We don't know whether she's got a will or not. We don't know whether she's got an LPA or not. So I'd want to try and establish that on the basis that it seems to be that Bosco, that's his main focus. He's more concerned about her than he is the business, but looking at this. So we don't want to leave him with a liability of a £500,000 house. All right, she's running debts up, but you know Richard's going to sort that out for her, so she won't be running debts up too much longer. So I'd like to find out what her plans are going forward with regard to, does she want to leave Bosco everything? Has she got someone else to leave it to? As far as inheritance tax is concerned, she's probably going to be okay unless she's got loads of other assets on the basis. I'm guessing she's a widow. I'm guessing that, and again, I need to find this out, her husband left a will. So she's going to have a dual allowance. So that's not going to be a major concern. But it's what her plans are, what her state of health is, what her state of mind is. So I'd want to go and have a really nice conversation with her and find out what she wants to do going forward. With an aim to setting up a will, lasting powers of attorney for property and finance and health and welfare.
Paul, where would you go in terms of the IHT planning when we don't know how much the shares might be worth? Because how would they be valued when it comes to in the event of death?
I mean, we definitely have to wait for a valuation to be put on the assets. And we need the date of death figures for at least the probate to go in, and that would inform if we need to go straight ahead with the application, or actually consider, if they then have a will, possible variation actually in place to save on tax. But we do need valuations as to the property, there are various assets as well as the valuations in the company to work out potential tax savings. If any, given all the allowances they may already be entitled to. So it may well mean that it's none. When you take the business property relief, you take the dual allowance they would be entitled to, you may not have any need for tax massively, but it's still important to have the figures and have a value put on them, because the taxman would definitely chase that. And they're quite hot on having value estate undervalued for inheritance tax savings, or you rarely have overvalued estate, but if you undervalue the assets, they do get on it pretty quickly to chase it up.
Doesn't sound like the HMRC. I was being sarcastic there. I suppose the challenge that Bosco's mum's got is she's entitled to the additional relief if she gives the property to Bosco. Would she still be entitled if it went to Bosco under intestacy rules or not, to that additional IHT bit?
You mean the
residential? Yeah.
relief? Well, it's to direct descendants. So if she's left it to the son, then obviously yes. But if it's not, then that benefit would
And I don't know the answer to this, and that's the reason I'm asking. If it went to the son but under intestacy rules, like there was no will in place,
yeah.
would she still be entitled to the additional residential property relief or not?
On paper,
You know,
yeah.
Rob.
She would be entitled. It's not the residential relief. It's not linked to having a will or not. It's linked to leaving a property to. Well, the way we work it out is obviously you follow the intestacy rules, and if it means the next, so the son, for instance, is the main beneficiary, you work that out based on the allowance available. So if he gets 100% of the property valued at £500,000,
he's still entitled. Yeah,
exactly, because I think it's worked out at £175,000 for the calendar year. So that's still more than enough to cover that.
Could be an issue. Could be an issue if the property value was bigger, right? Because that might use X amount of the intestacy allowance and then still go over, and that the rest might need to be sold and split. Would that create an issue?
No, because you have the dual. Well, if she was married before, then obviously she has the estate from her late husband, in addition to these residential relief to apply. So it's only where it's outside that then will it start looking at potential issues with tax payment.
Jacqueline, in terms of from your perspective, what else would you ask and what else would you think about recommending?
I'd like to get to know them a bit better because it sounds as if they started organically and they're not sure of where they want to go, how they want to do it. I want to know about the historical journey, what they expected to get when they started the business. How did they decide the roles? All that historic, we've talked a lot, but we've been talking about it, how things are now. There's a history to how they got here. And I think it'd be important to understand that history. So I'd like to have that discussion with them to really understand what their needs are before I spoke to any of you guys. To say these people need this or that. So really, with this one, it'd be about discovery for me.
And what would you okay, so we found out how they got there. They're now at a point where they're thinking about what's next. What sort of questions are you asking to work out how to align 4 people who all want different things? Or would you not take on 4 people as clients? Would you take on 1 and recommend that? How would you manage it?
Me being me, I'd want to talk to all 4 of them because they are individuals, but their business is an entity in its own right as well. And as individuals running a business, they've got their own particular motivations for why they're doing what they're doing. So I'd want to talk to each of them about that because it doesn't actually seem to me as if they really talk to each other.
Okay.
Looking at the fact that numbers don't seem to be discussed. Lockdown has happened. I think that's probably what's caused them to start thinking what's going to happen in the future. And so I'd want to really know what each of them wants. From that, it may then be that I decide, well, I can work with 1 or 2, but not the other 2. So maybe I'd work with John and Templeton because they want to carry on the business. And I'd call in Pradeep to talk to Bosco and Howard.
Bosco was really looking forward to working with you as well. He's going to be really upset. Pradeep, who'd be the clients you'd want to take on, and what ones would you just ignore, like Jack? No, I'm joking.
I wouldn't ignore any of them. They're all my potential clients.
Okay.
You guys have covered some key areas, and there are some more areas that I'd like to explore. particularly now that they've actually started talking about their businesses. You guys have talked about, the other guys exiting out. But in addition to talking to Bosco and Howard, I would still like to talk to John and Templeton, because these guys are thinking about extending the business for another 15 years, which means that they will be in the mid-70s. So it's a long stretch for them, particularly now they're looking at the other partners who are in their 60s, mid-60s. So when you asked the question earlier, when should they start thinking about it? I think they should start thinking about it now, because they are approaching end of that 50s decade into almost touching 60.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, it's 15 years is a long stretch. Would they want to enjoy their retirement or later life, or just stretch it for another 15 years into their 70s? Again, it's about what they want to do. So it's not just about the Bosco and Howard, it's John and Templeton as well. Some crucial questions to ask as well. Where do they want the business for, and the reason for it? So incorporate it into their life plan. What would their business look like in 5 years time, maybe 10 years time, if you want to stretch it that far? And what would they want to do in their life as well? Because there are other guys, Bosco and Howard, have already been thinking about stopping eventually. So it's something that they need to start thinking about now. One of the areas that I'd like to explore is, particularly for Bosco and Howard, Bosco in particular, because he's thinking about his mum. Now, the case study doesn't make it clear whether they have any children. If they have, then Bosco and Howard are in a sandwich generation. So they've probably got younger children, and they've also got parents. Now, that means that it can impact their lifestyle and choices that they can make moving forward. Particularly, you've talked about Bosco in this case with his mum. She may be fit and active at the moment, but gradually, with the aging process, her ability will start declining. And that means that he's going to have to spend more time with her than he's actually anticipating in terms of caring for eventually. So these are the things he needs to start thinking ahead, that what can he do in the immediate future that's going to give him a rewarding life, and then eventually get to a stage where you're going to have to be a carer. It happened to me at a certain age when I thought my father was independent and he can manage everything. And we knew deep down that eventually I'd have to step in when they can't look after themselves. So the same thing could apply to any of those four, if they still got parents or even children around.
Yeah.
So certainly, and again, talking about what impact is it going to have on their health? What the case doesn't make clear where are they in terms of how fit they are, or do they have any underlying health conditions which could have a major impact moving forward? Because either it aggravates it, or if you do conscious thinking about how to look after yourself, you can extend your health or improve your health basically by taking certain steps and maybe incorporating healthy habits, eating, drinking, and even exercising. So quite a few things to important there. The other thing is to consider is Bosco and Howard have been working together closely, because the business seems like a close-knit family, which means if Bosco and Howard step out, they're going to lose a large chunk of their social interaction with the work colleagues, the contractors, and maybe even their clients. That is going to be quite a void to fill in. So they have to start thinking that how can they replace that with something else.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because we've got a decent number of clients who are in that sandwich generation. So we've got parents who are in their 80s, but also kids that remain dependent that might be in their 20s. And it creates some challenges. I had a call a couple of weeks ago from a client of ours whose mum has just gone into care. And it's making sure that we satisfy the needs, because he's got an obligation to his mum now. So it's important that we sort of balance everything, and we're there for the entire family. And increasingly, a lot more of our work isn't only looking after the individual anymore, because it's all interconnected, isn't it? It's a family that we look after.
Very much so, because you have got obligations to your family, and you can't just push it aside, and that responsibility gets greater until they disappear off the face of the earth.
And there's also a cost issue to the cost of care. So this particular client only needs at the minute 3 hours a day, and that's costing £80 a day.
Yeah.
Now that isn't full time. That isn't home based care. That's sort of at their actual home. So you know, as soon as you start getting into home sort of residential care, and you're looking at the 40 to 50 grand a year, that needs to be considered as part of somebody's financial plan, and can have an impact on the kids. Not only the individual, can have an impact on the kids. Richard, how would you? Sorry, David, were you going to say something there? No, okay, that's fine. Richard, how would you make sure that Bosco's mum didn't run out of money again? Because potentially she's on a bit of a slide down in terms of spending more than she's got coming in. How would you help her balance her budget so that even if she did take money out of the property, it wouldn't run out?
Yeah, so we can set up, well, after the fact finding, we'd establish exactly what that looks like. But in terms of the products themselves, would allow that they allow an amount to be set up where you can take it on a monthly basis, and you can vary that so that you can balance it out over time. Perhaps Bosco's going to end up helping in the future. She may have other children, I don't know, from what I've read, and also perhaps put in sort of a future drawdown in place for an emergency. So, you know, the 45,000 that's been accrued, whilst it says credit cards and loan debts, you know, credit cards, are they impulse buyers or is it just Tesco shopping?
But you don't I mean, at this point, you don't know over what period of time that is. It could have been over 10 years, couldn't it?
Precisely, yeah, exactly. So just a bit more information. But I think ultimately the products would be there to help.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's all good. I'm going to sort of start wrapping up now, but on that, let's just do a quick round robin on final thoughts. Ian, let's start with you.
Yeah, so professionalisation, yeah, great to think about that. I think we've been through some of the timelines, but my experience is it normally takes probably between 5 and 7 years to get the preparations right to then look to sell. And then of course it takes as long as it will take to sell. Sometimes it's the wrong time. So that is one thing that I would suggest is at the back of their minds, and that should be what is part of their business plan. Or they decide that there is someone in the business to take over, because you're going to have a similar, maybe a little bit of shorter time sometimes to get that succession plan working well, rather than have to sell the business. I know we've been through this before, but yeah, that shareholders agreement is going to be vital. It should link in with the business plan, and tie all of those little bits and pieces together. Yeah, but no, these are the kind of clients that are really challenging because you've got the diversity, and it will be a lovely project to be involved with from my perspective, because I think Jacqueline made the comment, you know, you really get to know people in things like this, because the first thing you need to do is to ask loads of questions, understand a hell of a lot before anything really comes out of your mouth.
Yeah, I think you're right. Listen first, and I seek to understand, and then deliver. Rob, final thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm same as most people. This is a very complicated, long drawn out affair that could take ages to get sorted. From my perspective, my immediate thought process would be get each of the directors out of intestacy, get a very, very basic will, if necessary, drawn up for each of them, and powers of attorney for finance for each of them, be in constant contact with all of them, so that as the business develops and all of the other experts do their work, amend the will accordingly, add trusts if needed, you know, just have it as an ongoing process. But in the first instance, get them out of intestacy, get them out of having no control, and then just be on hand to manage it as it goes forward.
I think your point is 100% valid there, Rob. This isn't a short-term fix, is it? This is working with a client over a 5 to 7 year period to make sure that as it develops, they're in a good position. David, final thoughts.
Yeah, that's it. Right, I'm back with you now. I think most of it's been said before. One of the things that struck me, as Ian said, really, it's a challenge. Would I want them as a client? Probably, because of the challenging aspects of it. It certainly would stretch an awful lot on some of the things. The planning, the business planning, their life planning is all a bit flaky. Even their marketing plan, I wouldn't know what it was. I've got no idea. Turnover has been vanity to them, use the old phrase. There's nothing underpinning it to know exactly whether that turnover is yielding what it should yield or not. Got no idea. Their governance, I don't know what their governance is like there. Still looks a bit flaky. But I think most of the things have been said before. From my own perspective, it'll be a great challenge.
Right, a great challenge. But quick question: what would be the defining factor for you to decide whether you take them on or not?
Whether I take them on the defining factor? That's an interesting question. My first question to all my clients is, why are you in business? And if they come up with an answer which is giving me confidence they want to go forward in a really, really strong way, then there's no point in me having them as a client. I want clarity that they have some enthusiasm left and they've got some form of plan going forward. If it's all wishy-washy and vague, and they haven't really got a definable plan, I'd back off a bit. But it will be a challenge still, whichever way you look at it. I love it. Yeah, great.
Good stuff. Steve, tell us your final thoughts, please, mate.
Well, it's like everything, really. Cash flow is very important, more than anything. A business plan is, the planning side is so paramount to every business. Planning for the future, as I said, cash flow. We don't know there's so many questions to be answered here. I was looking just now at maybe the Mem Arts may restrict you on share transfers, various other aspects to the whole business. But the one thing that would worry me is that the two guys that were thinking of not carrying on the business in the near future, or certainly in the medium term, are the two, the operations people and the transport and logistics people. They're the ones that are running the business, basically, and they're the ones that want to get out in the
they're the ops guys, aren't they?
So everything's got to be planned, and looking at possible outsiders who might be able to take over the business, the running of the side of things, leaving the MD to continue in his position. But cash flow is so important.
Yeah, Richard, final thoughts.
Yeah, I'll take this one on. For me, I want to get my teeth into a real good fact find. I would bring in Bosco absolutely into the meeting with the mum as well, where possible, and any other family. But I think like what Steve said there's lots of questions to be asked. I think I can help. I can one way or another. I also do other mortgages, so it might be that I end up helping Bosco with something to knock out the debt. So I'll be able to take this one.
Amazing. Janet, thoughts?
I think definitely you've got to get that software in there. Let's get some zero going and get some numbers, make a decision. Like you say, you need the whole sort of understanding of where they sit with their shares and get an agreement in place. So I think that would be that would be the push. So once you've got that in place, then everything else can build from there on. But I mean, as far as would I work with the client, I think that would be the criteria. If they're not willing to adopt that, sort of big sort of change to their operation, then it would be very difficult to work with them. I think, it would have to be. That would be my sort of conditions that we'll get that in place. Now we can go forward and give you the information to make the changes in your business.
Yeah, how willing are you to take advice, right? Because if you're not, is there any point?
Yeah, yeah, because that's not you're not going to get job satisfaction out of that if you can't sort of provide a service to them.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before, but we've got a review at Cervello, a rule at Cervello that if we don't like somebody, we just don't take them on. And part of that is how it's not always how easy the relationship is, but how willing are we to work together to get through it? And that, I think that's the key factor, isn't it? Pradeep, thoughts?
Oh, loads of thoughts. Actually, I'd like to offer help to you guys. Because all I hear is you want to know a lot, the challenges you're going to face. I need to speak to these guys first to get a sense of clarity of what their purpose is, what they want to do. And from then on, they will have answers to your questions. Yeah. Before that, I think you're going to struggle really hard with these, all four guys actually. Because if they're not clear where they're going in their own life, they're not going to be able to talk to you about their business.
I think that point's valid. Life goes first, work goes second, and let one drive the other. I think that's important.
So we got a deal here, yeah? Chris?
You need to speak to me about it, Friday, but not on the Zoom call, clearly. Jacqueline, final thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely want to know more about them and do a lot of investigation to then be able to see clearly where they want to go. We're all assuming that they are willing. Some of them may, maybe some of them may not be. And so it's about how to get them all on the same page, as it were, and then to go off into their different directions and understand and be open with each other, really open about what they really want.
So would your approach be start with the four and then dig down into what they each want to aspire, or start with each one?
Yeah, so start with the four to get a general picture of what they think they want together. Look at what they want individually and see where the themes are. If they've got where the common themes are, talk about the commonalities. Where they're separate, where they're individual, then deal with those individual things together.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
thank you.
And then work away, agree a way of working with them.
Amazing, thank you. Paul, final thoughts?
Oh yeah, I think in addition to what Robert said, definitely get them to not be too concerned about the shares in the company, because they haven't actually valued it anyway, but to have the will drawn up, and best case, or if they're concerned, have the have the interest in possession trust put in, so that at least their spouses are protected, and then we can deal with financial planning, well, inheritance tax issues at a much later date. Yeah, but there's definitely a lot of information going forward that will be required as far as the estates, each of the estates are concerned, and what the total value would come to help advise us to inheritance tax provisions or savings we can put in place.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Paul. Sharon?
So my approach, I definitely take them on because I think they're an enormous challenge. My approach would be to sit down with them for a strategy day almost. Start with a business plan and their personal goals. Where do they want to go? What do they want to get out of it? Work from that. Do a soft credit check on them. Because all very well they've got this turnover, but how are they paying their suppliers? Are they efficient paying their suppliers? That little credit check is going to tell a lot. And then work with them to review their finance procedures, put some finance procedures in place by the sounds of it. To then start with management accounts and leading on from that to forecast for them so that they know where the business is going, they've got direction, budgets so that they're controlling their costs, and a cash flow so that they see where their future goes, and then they've got a much clearer idea.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that. And
Chris, sorry. One thing that no one's discussed yet, the lockdown has hit the company hard. I would also like to have a word with the staff. you know, whether it's a private meeting or whatever, just to see what support I've got behind me, you know, before I even discuss it with the directors and so forth. If, however hard the business has been hit and trying to get out of lockdown, they may have serious problems with staffing and furlough costs and things like that.
Well, the other important thing I think to consider is motivation as well.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
How if they've got a team of 10, how is this business going to be driven forward not only by the directors but also by the team? And what the directors doing to keep them engaged? Don't know at this point. Mike, final thoughts.
Yeah, somebody touched on, I think it was Ian, touched on the fact that the value in this company could be if they actually bring a team in so that directors take a step away from the business and don't get involved on such a day-to-day basis. I'd be interested to go through the value of the business now and what it could be worth. And I think the thing that probably would cry out is the fact that the over-dependence on the directors is holding the value back at the moment. And that would be interesting. And that could work in their favour as well when BA and Murdoch, Bosco and Howard move on, then you know, you wouldn't necessarily see them being replaced at the same level. And so they've got this team below them.
Amazing, thank you. Thank you to everybody for getting involved. A couple of things from me. We do record these sessions. If you've got any reticence about this going out on LinkedIn or social media or anything like that, give us a shout, but assuming that everybody's happy, it helps us promote all of our businesses by sharing these sessions we have. Yeah. And thank you to everybody we're doing a white paper at the minute called what happens next, where we're focusing on some of the challenges that some of our clients and clients of our professional network are facing when they're thinking about what's next in their life. You've probably got an email on that today because Harsha has been amazing in organising that. Harsha, thank you for getting involved today. And two things from you. Number one, Harsha is going to be sending out the notes from today's meeting. So if we could just offer Harsha thanks, because that's certainly not a job I wanted to take on. So thanks, Harsha, for doing that.
Thank you so much. It was very insightful for me to get in touch with so many people and to understand how this actually works and what more is there for me out there in the world to learn and to understand in a much deeper sense. So thank you. It was really productive for me.
Did you find it useful, Harsha? Good. And Harsha, the other thing is as well, speak to Hervé, and when you send out the summary, can you make sure everybody's contact details are on there so that if people do want to connect outside of the Zoom room, we can go from there. We haven't got an inner circle in August. We're taking August off, but we will be back in September, and hopefully I will speak to a lot of you soon.
Brilliant. Cheers, Chris.
Thank
See you all.
See you later.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.